Hey everyone, welcome to week 56. This is going to be another one of our conversation weeks. Our guest for this week is going to be Timothy Wilson. This is a conversation that I had with Tim. He's a painter that I admire profoundly, so I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Remember, there's going to be 5 paintings during this video, so that's going to be the company for our conversation. So I hope you guys like the format, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. It's unedited, so it's going to be pretty cool. So see you next week. No theme. Bye.
No, totally. Yeah, I was looking around. I found a microphone, but it's I don't have the old 3 prongs.
It's like 1984 microphone.
Yeah.
Of course you would have one of those
Yeah.
microphones. That's totally fine. No, dude, audio. I think having perfect audio for, a conversation with you is almost like,
It would make
pointless.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't really. Yeah, it's like you having like a satellite phone, on top of this big rock while waves are crashing, and you're just like, oh, this is perfect. Verizon, this is perfect audio.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, we don't have to do that. Honestly, like this is totally fine. So thank you, dude. I mean, this is more like a conversation. This is not really an interview. Like I didn't prep anything. I'm just like super happy to be talking to you because I don't even remember where I met you. I'm sure it was virtually, but I tried to remember. I tried to recall, but I don't even know. I don't know if it was like a forum, a painting forum or something like that.
I feel like this goes back into the memory banks, a lot, but it was something to do with like conceptart.org. If you remember,
Or something.
yeah, like
Right.
Massive Black and stuff. And then there was, so I know, I was familiar with your work when I was in college. It was definitely like an inspiration for me. And I remember it was Guerrilla Art Fair, I think was when people were
Nice.
doing more of the fine art painting thing, and everyone got together and yeah, something with that. Remember like Tom
Oh, no.
Scholz and Minions?
Right.
Yeah, those guys.
Right. Do you those RISD days? Do you think? Yeah, because I was also asking this to Ruprecht when we talked, and I'm fascinated by this because there's a lot of people that I have a connection with that even though like everyone has walked down like very separate and very different paths, they started with illustration for some reason.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's arbitrary, a very arbitrary reason. It's not like illustration is a bond that we all share. But I mean, that doesn't mean one particular thing. But I know that you had, that there was a moment in your life that you were interested in those things, like that was, at some point, like, oh, maybe I could do this for a living.
Oh, completely. I mean, that was, for all of my, childhood rearing and everything, I was constantly sketching characters and, stories, and just fantasy things were always just something I was obsessed with. And I think illustration gets people like us because we want a way to, we're so overwhelmed with all these ideas that it gives us a way to definitively get something out of our system. Be like, okay, here is this person, and I know I can draw a shield, and I know I can do this and that, and like, there we go, like, check it off. And so it's a way to like get this tangible ability to describe something. And I feel like that's the stepping off point for a lot of people. Is, I know with my experience, I'm so grateful for learning like all the different, applications and how to just sketch and get things done. But then after that, it was having that ability that helped me kind of get into painting more, because I knew that like I could lose parts of something and just work on, getting obsessed with the process or whatever. And so it's having that, I feel like illustration builds up the skill, where I've heard a lot of painting departments in schools, they're kind of just like, well, here's, they're gonna throw this thing out in the field and maybe go try to find it. They don't actually teach you, here's how to get something done. You have this in your mind. Let's figure out a way to do that. It's kind of more of an exploratory thing, which can be great. But when you actually have a lot of ideas that you want to get out of your system, I think illustration just kind of like, it just really helps get that manual skill done, that technical ability.
That's really cool. I never thought about it that way, like a sort of conclusion. I mean, it's not like the end, but I never thought about it like that. But I think I can relate to that feeling where I remember it was probably, not even third year of painting, maybe fourth year, like final year, where, that moment where you're learning and where you feel like this is such a steep learning curve and I'm never going to be able to actually produce paintings. But I remember having that feeling, like saying, it's not like I can paint anything, but I can finally paint. Like I can finally think that I can say something through paint. So it's not just this battle with paint, and it's not just this feeling of a complete, dissatisfaction. It was just like, hey, I can actually do things with this. And I remember feeling awesome. I mean, it was never like, I had Steve Assel and Max Ginsberg as teachers. It was never like, oh yeah, I can paint like them. But it was like, hey, I can paint. And I think that you're right in the sense that there's a lot of illustration that teaches you, hey, you have to be able to conclude that image. You have to be able to try and say something through that image. And the process has to be finite. It has to end at some point.
And I think that was my issue, because it taught me the way to finish things. And I realized, like, when I was doing assignments and stuff, I would get so. I remember actually distinctly, I was working on. I had this professor, John Foster, who he used to study with. He's contemporary with Phil Hale and Rick Barry and everyone. And it was this comic book cover class. And I was going to redesign a Wolverine comic book. And I was, doing sketches and stuff and had thumbnails. And then I spent most of the week, like, drawing my hand, because I wanted to figure out a way that the claws would come out of my hand. And so for this project, I had this quickly dashed off Photoshop thing. But then I had, like, a sketchbook full of these, like, intricate renderings of my fingers, because I was obsessed with just one thing led to another. It's like, oh, and I can try this idea and that idea. And so I realized at that point, like, I was less interested in the putting the period on that sentence and more just kind of leaving it at a comma. And that's what I feel like painting does. The difference between, like, illustration and painting is, like, illustration is like, here's the point, period. It's all here for you. Do you get it? Hopefully you do, because if you don't, then I did a bad job with the illustration. And painting is like, you don't get it? Thank God, because I want you to interact more and figure it out on your own. And so it's kind of like, I was just realizing that, there's no good way to do it. Like, like you just said, you can go through painting and you learn how to do the paintings, and I learned how to do the ideas. And it's kind of like, they're one and the same, but they're maybe just, marketed differently.
But that's amazing that you give that example, because, I'm interested in like those first moments, those first interactions that people have with, wherever they started their art career.
Yeah.
Because, for you, it's been almost like, 15, 20 years, since you.
Yeah. I mean, I graduated in 2008. So it's,
So we're closing in on like 15 years. And that's amazing, because when I have, probably not right now because I stopped teaching, but for 12 years, I had this interaction with young artists, and you can sense their pain and this, existential angst, and, when they're trying to figure out what they want to do. And because art school kind of feels like the culmination of some process, and some people think, well, okay, that's the artist that I'm going to be for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I always find it super, super interesting. And especially, I think it happens a lot with illustrators or with people that, I did illustration for, like, I don't know, 3 years, maybe. That was it. But for people who graduated or who took an illustration course, the fact that it starts there, and I'm not saying that you can't live your whole life as an illustrator. There's incredible illustrators, throughout time. But I find it fascinating that sometimes, something that can be as obvious as illustration, like it seems like a chosen path, that eventually just morphs into this totally different thing, like this other beast. And, it's not like those two paths are not connected. Like right now, when you're describing the fact that you had to do a cover, but you were just, entranced in trying to figure out how things, how these claws would come out of Wolverine's knuckles. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but when you paint waves, when I see your painting of waves, it's like, okay, I want to try and give myself into nature and try to figure, not figure things out as if you were like the scientists, like trying to comprehend the nature of how waves break. But you're trying to say, how do I, capture this, crazy moment of nature, this almost like threatening moment of nature, and it is about that, and not so much. Well, the painting is like I almost call paintings like an inevitability, like that's what happens at the end of the painting process. Just you end up with a painting, but
Yeah.
maybe there's other things that fueled it that are completely different. So to close that point, like I love, and I always love to tell like young artists, like, even if this is what you think your career is going to be, like life has so many paths and so many, twists and turns. Like you're never going to believe what you're going to end up doing in 15 or 20 years. Like it probably, maybe it is the development of that moment that you're in right now, or maybe it is something completely different and super weird, and it has nothing to do with what you're doing right now, and they're both amazing paths. So don't feel desperate to know. Don't try to figure things out right now, because it doesn't matter. Like, that those things will come with time. And I think you're like the most awesome example. Like I was thinking about people that I know, whose lives has taken them, so many different places, and you are that awesome example. You're that artist for me. Like that is probably, I always say, like, I love certain people's work, but you, dude, I totally admire you as this human being, as you are what, the essence of artist kind of means. It doesn't mean, I'm not trying to say that every single artist should take your path.
I would not recommend it.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I don't wish that on anyone.
Yeah, I
But
know.
but you've had the fortitude to do that. But it's incredible. Like to me, when I see you work, I'm like almost like in tears, dude. I'm like, oh my god, this is what it's supposed to be about, and that's amazing. I feel that the fact that you started in some point and then you are here right now, it's just true to that. I don't know, to that tale that we just have to walk that path, and it is a very individual path.
I think you've just got to do what you feel called to do, and it is like you just said. The painting is the inevitability. I think that you've got to investigate things, and like, yeah, I didn't expect to be doing landscape things. I still have a constant frustration because I want to be doing so much, but there's so much that I can learn every day just by observing things, going out, and I can look at the same ocean every day and it's constantly different. And the painting, if I do a study, like the study is the thing that, just happens when I'm there because I need an excuse to observe and investigate. And it almost doesn't matter what the study looks like because it's all kind of like in my head, and I'm learning this vocabulary that, hopefully I'll be able to put into use with doing all these other things. It's kind of like being a jazz musician. You've got to learn all these different scales and things, and then you can do whatever, improvisation you want to do. You just got to really invest yourself in making those skills really like inherent. So you don't think about it when you're doing it. You can just pull it out of your system. Yeah, and I didn't, I just feel like you've just got to dedicate yourself. That's that's like what's the word? That's kind of the monastic thing that needs to happen with artists. You've got to dedicate yourself to this idea and this image that you want to do to make it, as truthful as you want it. And so, I try to get as immersed in the subjects that I can, and it's just really interesting, and I've been noticing a hybrid with the oceans and things because now that I'm kind of reapproaching my studio life, I've been noticing that something I really love doing is I react to canvases, and having done figures for so long is I can just like make a couple like swirly motions or something, and I'll see like, oh, there's a torso, or here's a whole scene. And I have destroyed so many canvases because she does one little thing, like, oh my god, I was going to make this, but now I want to make it this right here. And I just need to do this. And when I'm painting oceans or something, I see so many uh, like Pompeii bodies. Like I see these like figures cowering almost with the swirl of the crashing waves. And so I've been trying to convert, those elements into, rendering these figures. And I pull out of my head because I have, spent so long of my life really observing the figure and how it interacts and know how, anatomy occurs and how to really kind of like bring these things to a certain culmination. And so I find enjoyment in that. And so I don't know where the landscape things will lend themselves to, but I can imagine that at some point I'll be working on something and I was like, oh, I want to put this whole little vignette of this whole scene that I remember because I was there and I did this thing. And so now I can just do that without the process right now is exceedingly inefficient because I'm constantly, learning. But then at some point, when I'm 60, 70, like hopefully it'll all be worth it because I can just sit in my studio all day long and just like build, be old man Corot. Like, he was painting constantly outside and somehow he managed to turn out hundreds of these beautiful figurative compositions and these just, I've realized that proliferation, isn't bad. To be prolific, it's essential sometimes to get things out of your system. And once you learn how to do something, you can then do variations on a theme, and those variations, those subtle nuances, I think are really important to, like it was the first thing, like describing, drawing my hand all these times, the subtle nuances that maybe not everyone will notice, but when you figure out that one variant that just captures and distills down everything that you've been looking for, I mean, it's amazing. It just can be a really overwhelming process that has all these different avenues.
Right. Oh, it's so cool you say that, and I think, I mean, we are on very different paths, but in the sense that I'm doing, and I had to come to terms with this, like, and not be almost like ashamed of it, because people would throw it in my face as if it was some sort of insult or if it was demeaning. But they were saying, I've heard people tell me like, oh, you're just painting studies now. You're painting sketches now. And you used to be this painter that did these multi-figure compositions and far more complex images. And it's a shame, that's how they frame it. Like, it's a shame that now you're doing, now all you're doing is like sketching and studying. And in my mind, like,
it's not all you're doing; it's what you're doing right now. Yeah.
Right. But I remember at the beginning feeling like threatened by that, like saying, and almost feeling like giving them, the right to tell me that. And I was like, yeah, I should try to find some balance in doing some larger and more involved. I used those words in my mind, paintings. And then suddenly at some point I was like, who cares? Like, that is what painting means to me right now. And if I have to be super honest, dude, I feel like I've never learned so much about myself and about painting as I have in the past, like 2 years or 3 years that I've done like these smaller projects that are, in terms of execution, they are, far, far smaller than anything that I had ever done before. So, for the past year, I've been doing these daily paintings, and literally it's like painting every single day and solving an image, attempting to at least solve an image every single day. And it's been incredible. I really feel like I tapped into, and this is important for me. I'm not saying that I made this huge discovery for anybody else, but I tapped into something that is so different. It just feels so different. And I feel total kinship, like when you're describing this idea of studying. It's like, when did study become this bad word? Like, study doesn't mean that, a study will only be valuable when it's put to use in this larger, culmination piece. No, a study in itself can just be this willingness to observe and to study and to, not only to study your subject matter, but you're studying yourself in that same.
Because you're within that, like with the studies. And I have so much to say on that, but like immediately, like with studies, you are uninhibited because you're not thinking about the final result. And that's where like some of my favorite paintings are the unresolved unfinished masterworks. They're trying to they're quickly sketching out this portrait or something, and so there's messy, runny elements here and there. When their finished things are going to be really precise, overly rendered, whatever. Is like it's this thing where they're capturing life in a way, because they didn't realize that this study was going to be on display in the Louvre, 100 years from when they made it. But that's the thing that actually captures something interesting, because they were uninhibited. They weren't worrying about, oh my God, my audience is going to see this and they're going to think about whatever. So it's similar to what you just said. Like, I was having a really tough time with being categorized as a landscape painter, because it was, I have spent my whole career manifesting things and running away from them as they happen. And so, when I was going to have success doing whatever and whatever, I'm like, oh no, I got to do this. And like, I'll hide away. And, I've got a lot of, some psychological things to deal with for sure. And when I was first, doing the landscape studies, in addition to doing figure things and whatever kind of darker imagery was in my head, it was such an amazing appeasement, because I feel like my audience was aware, it's like, oh, it's just a thing. And then suddenly, when I became really obsessed with the landscape, I feel like it was similar to what you said. Like, people were almost being like, oh, all you're doing is like seascapes, all you're doing is landscape studies. And I'm like, well, it's what I am doing, but I know that it's for the greater good. It's for this larger thing. And within that, I'm discovering a confidence that I didn't have with the other things that I did. So it's like, so what? So this is what I'm doing right now. And it's really interesting, like in today's climate as well. I think about all these different artists that I know used to do, and I know you, so, when you're in New York, if you're in these huge, large scale paintings, these you were doing larger compositions and stuff too a few years ago. And it's something about, people immediately think because you're doing a study it isn't worth it, but it's like, in order to write that novel, you've got to sketch out story ideas. You've got to sketch out character plans, plot holes. You've got to make these little thumbnails. If you're going to write a symphony, you've got to figure out what the bridge is going to be. You've got to figure out each instrument's part, and like, you've got to make all these things that eventually will come together. And like, if Beethoven was alive now, I bet he would have written a lot of jingles and had the same amount of symphonies, But like, no, there weren't jingles back then. But it's not like there are thousands of completed Beethoven symphonies. There's a good amount, but like, it's, now that people are seeing more of the artistic process, and we aren't turning out these masterpieces every single day, there's a strange, critique, like, oh, you're just doing studies, when it's really just, it's just part of the process. And I don't think ever before in history, like, it would have been kind of disheartening for Da Vinci if people were like, oh my God, you're doing another Mona Lisa sketch, why don't you just do the painting? It's like, I bet he did a lot of sketches before he did a certain thing, and the sketches are these beautiful things in themselves, but it wasn't, the audiences didn't see that at that time. And so it's just like a difference now that we're so exposed online and stuff, like it can become a difficult thing. And I will fully admit, like, that's what got me, is I ran away from, I felt frustrated myself for not putting out more and more meaningful, or like, masterpiece things that I had in my head, because I was constantly doing studies. And then like, I was like, oh, I'm just, I don't want to read comments about this and that because it is just a study, but then I've got to interact with the audience because I got to put it out there. And I fell into this strange psychological hole of like being too scared to put things out there, because I knew everyone's going to say, oh, that's awesome. But I wanted to give them something even more awesome that wasn't just a study. And it's just I think that it's a really interesting point in an artistic atmosphere right now, and that like, everything we do is on display, and it's just trying to come to
Right.
terms with being like basically like it's a performance. I mean, I when I'm painting out on location, uh, I get frustrated at times because like the amount of like tourist photos I'm sure I'm
Mm-hmm.
in of like this man in the shadows painting on the rocks, the ocean and stuff. Like it's, I feel like in a way people, uh, expect me to. The amount of times people come over and say, "Oh, this is a beautiful painting," and I literally just started, and it's like a painting on top of another painting on top of another painting, and it's just the
Mm-hmm.
most horrid thing in the world. I'm just like, "Oh my god, don't look at it! Come back in 20 minutes! Like, I just started." But then I realized, like, oh, like they actually don't care. They just love seeing this performance. They love seeing something happen, and it's totally fine, And like,
Yeah.
so what?
Right. Yeah, I had to. I've had moments in my life where I've had to come to terms with that. I think I can think of a couple. I can think of copying stuff at the Met and realizing that people were far more interested in whatever you were doing at that time than
Yeah,
the actual painting that you're copying.
yeah,
And you sort of want to explain to people, dude, I'm like light years away from being able to comprehend the painting that I'm copying. I was copying Rembrandt, so there was no way.
yeah,
But the people, everyone just gathered around and they were seeing, I don't know, similitudes in like things that were not there, but they were saying, oh, look, this is exactly how Rembrandt painted his self-portrait.
yeah,
And, at some point I was like, oh my God, these people don't understand. And then I thought, no, that's actually, no. This is actually a really nice way to introduce people to like how painting happens. And yeah, if it's, if that's the experience that they want to have, or if that leads to them, wanting to know more about Rembrandt, or if that's it, if it's a totally ephemeral, moment where they're like, oh my God, I saw somebody painting and it was cool, and that's it. I think that that's awesome.
yeah.
I've come to accept that. And the other thing was a demo I did. It was one of the first demos I did. It was in Fontbonne in St. Louis. They hired me to do a talk, and I had to do this talk to which was funny, to the master's program, and I didn't do a master's. I think you didn't either.
Yeah, no, I
We're
didn't. Yeah.
just we're BFAs. But and I was like, what am I going to speak to a master's program? I never went through this. I actually think it's quite ridiculous to go through a master's program, but that's my thing.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay. And second day, I had to do a demo. And I was super full of myself in the sense that, I wasn't being overtly cocky, but deep inside, it was like, I can do this. I could do this in my sleep. And I didn't even bring, materials with me, because I was like, no, I'm not going to carry anything. If anything, like I'll buy something over there, or, they'll just give me something and I'll totally paint it. And I've told the story before, but they gave me a clay board. I don't know if you've ever painted on clay boards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those things, I had never painted on a clay board, but I was like, oh, this is as good as moment as any to just learn. And I was like, oh yeah, it's totally fine. And I don't want to blame it on the clay board. That's why I started saying, this was me being stupidly cocky. But as soon as I started painting, I was like, oh my God, this thing is absorbent. Like, this fucking thing is like crazy absorbent. And I sucked. Bottom line is, it was terrible. It was really terrible. And people were leaving when I turned around, like during breaks. It was like a packed,
Oh,
full house.
That's the. Yep, I know.
And then 40 minutes in, dude, everyone was leaving. And I was like, oh my God, this is painful. And that gets to you, even if you don't want it to, it gets to you. And I remember just feeling so small and saying, like, this is the last time I ever take painting for granted. Like, this is the last time I think that this is easy, because it's not easy. And it was really like that turning point in my life where I was like, it's not so much about being ready. It's not that I wasn't painting before that, or just, no. I was working like super hard, but it's just that it's always hard. It's always going to be tough.
It's always, yeah. And and in the end, when you finally get, that's what, like, it's still a constant frustration for me. And in the end, the reason why oceans are great, because I get so frustrated, I can just smear everything and then I can reapproach it. It's like, oh, thank God it actually kind of looks like the thing in front of it. But like, no, it's so frustrating. It is honestly like anything else comes easier to me and is so instantly gratifying. Drawing, I don't draw that much anymore because it is too gratifying, and then I won't want to paint, whereas painting is like, it's, I feel like if I were to give up painting, I wouldn't have to worry about going bald so quickly or something. But like, I'm so constantly just like, oh my God, why can't I get this? But when I finally figure it out, it's just the best feeling in the world, and I kind of, it's worth going through that frustration. But along the lines of like, thinking about when you were doing that demo, even like these people that are at the, and I consider you to be, you're definitely at the top of your game. Like, but, for years, decades, Odd Nerdrum's been known as like the Rembrandt guy. And I remember, I guess it was years ago at this point, or a few years ago, but he was doing a demo at, I think it was at GCA, the Grand Central Academy. Mm-hmm. And, his process is, a labor, it's, if you're doing the Rembrandt thing, you are scumbling, glazing, you're doing a lot of indirect, a lot of this stuff, and to get this texture and whatever, like, I know he uses this, it's called like a herringbone weave. It's a really thick canvas. And I remember seeing images of this, like he was doing a demo on that and doing like an alla prima portrait. And to get to, people wanted to see something that they're used to seeing in Odd Nerdrum. And part of his process is, sanding down layers that don't really work to get this interesting blending and softening of edges. And so he started sanding this like super wet painting because he had like, an hour, and people wanted to see Odd Nerdrum. He's like, I'm just going to do this. And he was, from what I heard, he was having a really frustrating, hard time. And this is a guy who's dedicated his life to making this kind of imagery, and he was scrambling to try to entertain the audience because they wanted to see a thing. And it's kind of like, it gets us all. Even the Grand Masters have that frustration where like they still don't quite, like, shit, like I should be able to know how to do this in front of people or something, but I'm still having a frustrating time painting because painting is really hard. And
or even just the confidence to say, dude, this is what I do happens in the span of like 4 months. What I'm going to do today is not going to be less. And that's what I've been trying to teach myself. It's just going to be a 4-hour painting. Exactly. This is a 4-hour painting. That's a 4-month painting. And that's about it. It doesn't speak about more or less. It just speaks about a different span of time. And that's it. It's a different, you have a set amount of time that you dedicate to, in your execution. And that's it. But I totally agree with you. Like, I wish like we had the mental fortitude to, when we do, demos or stuff like that, we just tell people, okay, here's your expectations. Those are not really going to be met if you are trying to, like if you want to see that is not going to happen today. But that doesn't mean that today is not useful. Like, it doesn't mean that painting experience today is useless. Like,
entirely, yeah.
Yeah, I just saw you sketch. Yeah, you just saw me sketch. That's what it is. That's why I'm not being like mean or I don't want to sound unfair to painters who are very, very prolific and who can in a very short span of time just do amazing paintings. I don't know if you're familiar with like that British painting show where they have, what is it?
I'm familiar with the British baking show.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. If you really think about it, it's like the same thing but with painting. But they have to do it. And I watch it with Danny. We've watched tons of it. But I think it's like 3-4 hours to paint to do a live portrait.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could do that. Like in my mind, I'm like, sure, you would end up doing a 3-4 hour portrait. It's not like that's impossible. But, a lot of these people that take this incredibly seriously, they train themselves so that they can, it's almost like running like a 100-meter sprint. Like you have to train for that.
Yeah.
You can't just you can't just go out, and run as if you were going to train for a marathon and think that you're going to be fine for the 100-meter dash. Like that's crazy. So what painters have realized is that this is this is like training, like literally like training. Like you train for something specific, and you can actually train yourself so that you can know what to expect from a 4-hour exercise.
Well, and that 4 hour exercise, like you train because then when you're running the marathon at the very end, if you pull out that 100-meter dash, you'll floor everyone, and so you have to be able to do both. You have to do it all
Right.
somehow.
Right. Yeah, but that's amazing. That's what, if I've noticed that if that's something that you want to do, you really, really have to literally train yourself to do that. You like your body and your mind have to recognize, okay, 20 minutes have gone by. I should be done with this.
Yeah.
An hour and a half has gone by. I should be doing this. And it's pretty remarkable. But, what I was trying to say with that is that, unfortunately, when these things are sort of socialized and sold as these painting packages that are supposed to teach you how to paint, people have this weird expectation, like that out of the blocks, you're going to be able to produce something, consistently beautiful in a very short span of time, which is not, that's like the farthest from the truth. It's been really curious for me to sort of bang my head against that wall in terms of, I always give myself about, I don't know, at most I think the most that we've painted for, every day has been 5 hours, which is really weird because I could, normally I could paint for like 12 hours a day. I'm like that sort of person. And I love those, long spans of time where I can paint in a day. But I had never actually thought day after day after day after day, I'm going to give myself, anywhere from 3 to 4.5 hours to paint something and to try to understand it as something that's being solved. Now, this was super tough, but in my mind, I started understanding that solving something doesn't necessarily make it like this great painting. It doesn't matter. Like, what's cool about what we've been doing with this painting exercise for the last year is that, what I see as painting now is just like the cumulative act of all of these things coming together, but not any single painting.
Yeah.
Because I try to tell people, like, there's no single painting that I've done that I really think it's like extraordinary. Like, I don't see them as, oh yeah, this was a great painting and this one's not so good. If anything, in my mind, they're all just, the same. They're all just like,
it's about
okay.
showing up. And that's what the German painter Neo Rausch, like I remember reading and that he goes to the studio. It's like it's 9 to 5 or it's 8 to 5 or whatever. He's there every day. He shows up to do this thing, this process, and it's a different. He's working on these large scale things, but like he's showing up. He's going to work. He's getting these things done. His paintings are awesome. I've never been floored, but he's making really consistently wonderful stuff because he's showing up. And like, I think, that's really important, and in the end, like we were talking about, like, these are going to lead to something. Like, every day you're making these really wonderful explorations and studies, and maybe not one of them stands out to you immediately right now, but like this whole experience is what it's about, and that is going to affect what you're going to be doing afterwards. And so it's just about this tangible experience of things. And it's kind of like, so if we're talking about like the timing of things, I know I could do a painting in 15 minutes. I could do a portrait sketch. I could do this and that, and it would be something. And what I've been realizing is, now that I'm kind of posting again, I made a quick little thing about, when people ask me how long a painting takes, it's like, well, this took me 34 years kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. But like, the truth is, I sent you this image yesterday of this self-portrait I started, and like, it's a messy beginning, but like my concept for that portrait is like, I want it to become an abstracted figure. I want it to encapsulate, I want to show how every day the studio's changing, I'm changing. I can't do that in an hour. I could pretend and swirl things and this and that. But if I dedicate an hour of my day every day for the next who knows how long, I'm going to naturally have a process where my arm was once here and suddenly it's changing to go over here and here and here. And I'm not forcing an abstraction. I'm literally documenting what's in front of me. But
Hmm.
because of that process, I'm bringing into play time, and there is no way that that painting could be done in a day. I could fake it and it might look like something. There's so many artists who
Hmm.
will, here's the face. Oh, the nose is over here, and
Hmm.
I, that can look cool and stuff. But if it happens naturally, it'd be so much more interesting. And the only way to make that happen is to give it time. And so maybe it'll be a painting that takes 50 hours,
Hmm.
but that 50 hours is over the course of 50 days, over the course of many, many months. And, there's no way to shortcut that.
Right. That's like Anne Gale when,
Yeah,
and I know you love Anne Gale's
yeah,
work too,
exactly. Yeah.
but there's no way like
And that's why it's so powerful. That's why her work is so powerful.
yeah, when you hear that she paints, I don't know, 6 paintings a year, you go like, yeah, it totally makes sense. That just it has to be that way. It just has to be. And I know there was at some point in my life that I was like, oh, if I'm painting 6 paintings a year, like that's what I always used to feel when I looked at Antonio Lopez work
Yeah.
paintings. I was like, how do you make money off of that? Like, all these painters, I remember, was when I was young, when I was in school, I would go almost like every year to a show at Arcadia or, Eleanor Edinger at that. I don't
Yeah.
remember now, but, and Skip Lipke had shows. And he had like 65 paintings every year.
Yeah.
And it was sold out every single year. And I was like, oh my God, this guy has it made. Like he figured it out. Because I was like, look at how much he's been able to produce, and it's all the time it's sold out, sold out, sold out. Now, like, eventually, like I was like, okay, that's a little too much, but
Yeah.
I still respect that he knows the type of artist that he is, and he was able to get to that point, and that surely satisfies him. And the market can't get enough of that. So, but for me, I was like, okay, this side, and then I would go to a Jenny Savile show, and I was like, oh my God, how much paint is in this, and how long did this take?
Yeah.
And then reading that painters would take a year, 2 years to do a painting, and I was like, I remember my brain just really scrambling when I was younger, just feeling like, how do you do this then? Like, how is any of this supposed to work? And then I realized, like, what you're saying right now, um, like the best thing that you can do is for a painting to obey its intent, like,
Yeah.
and for you to be faithful to that. If your self-portrait is just uh, this span of time, covers this span of time where you're challenging your perception of self, and the relationship between this space that you're going to inhabit, while producing paintings for this particular show, and how that changes and how that morphs and how you change with it. That's awesome. That's the painting that you want to paint. And I
Yeah.
think that we have to sort of honor those things. I think that that's, if we recognize those things, like the most beautiful thing you can do is just say, I have to honor this. Like, this is
Yeah.
how this painting is supposed to be painted.
Well, and that's the thing where what I've been running into is wanting to do those 6 paintings a year, but also wanting to do 600 paintings a year, and realizing that I think this is why, so we haven't talked about it, but, for coronavirus, I mean, I was going through a tough time a couple of years ago because things were working out in my career and I couldn't have that. So I ran away from it all and blah, blah, blah. And like, I was kind of, still doing this and that. And when coronavirus came, my shows were paused and this and that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into carpentry full time. And
Mm-hmm.
prior to then, I maybe, I was doing, 60-hour weeks in the studio. The longest period I'd gone without painting was, 6 days, if anything. And then suddenly it was going on like 8 months of full-time carpentry and not really being in the studio. And it wasn't that I was any less of an artist, if I am an artist, but like I just realized that what I needed to do was step back, and actually getting those carpentry, skills really helps, because what I realized is I need to have storage. I need shelving. I need to be making panels constantly in these ways to make efficient systems. I've made all my own painting rigs when I go outdoors, and the easel in the studio, because I need to have a way to have these larger canvases that I'm going to pick away at. And I also need to have a system where I've got these canvases ready to go every single day, so I can constantly be, doing this and that. And I realized that I was kind of burnt out on an inefficient system. And, the amount of paintings that I think is important. George Ennis used to paint over his paintings and other people's paintings all the time. And I realized I find a holistic nature in that too. Like if it's, you're redirecting a painting when you do that and it's beautiful, but that can't be for every single painting, because eventually, if you're just doing this one canvas constantly, you're only going to have one painting. And so I need to have that happening on a couple of canvases, but I need to have blank things ready to go all the time. And I was so exhausted on my system of painting over things that I needed to figure out a way to make an efficacy. And so to step back and realize, like, oh wow, I need a really good archival system. I need a really good studio layout and all these different things. Now that I'm coming back into it, I'm kind of reapproaching it, and I'm not overwhelmed, because I know that I've got all these things ready to go, and I can file these canvases here to dry and let them gestate, because it's like, I know it's going to require a total dedication, and I need to be in the right mind space to do that, because it's no longer, just it's not a job. It's just a 9 to 5. It's like you're doing this thing, and it might take you two in the morning, and then you're gonna get up at 7 because you want to capture the sunrise. Then you want to do other things in the studio, and then you're gonna get this idea when you're looking in a mirror and seeing a reflection that you want to make that a canvas, and suddenly it's this wholly immersive thing that takes all your energy, and unless you have a good system for it, you're not going to be able to do all the things you want to. And so, yeah, taking a little break was really good for me. But going back to what I was, that's a tangent. Like, basically, those.
No. Can I say something though?
Yeah.
Can I say something? I mean, I'm really happy that you kind of see that break in time, which I don't really feel it's a break. I think that we have a life, and painting is many times part of that life, and then other times it's not. But it doesn't matter. Like, it's not about. At least I have kind of trained myself to not think that I have to just put my painting hat on and that's when I'm a painter. Like, I went through something somewhat similar. I mean, I know our lives are very different, but when I was teaching, at some point I was like, yeah, I'm a painter and I'm a teacher. And, after 10 years of teaching, you go like, oh, fuck, I'm actually a teacher now. Like, I'm not painting as much as I used to paint. I'm totally satisfied with my job as a teacher, but now I'm a teacher. Yeah. And I always, and in my mind I was like, and I always wanted to be a painter, and this is horrible. I remember beating myself up so bad, just thinking that I had betrayed myself. Like, I had exchanged, being a painter for, and I guess that had to do with me having kids and trying to find something that was solid. But solid, dude, I didn't get paid $1,000 a month for any of those 12 years that I taught. I didn't earn $1,000 a month. That was my teaching gig. So I was getting what, 12,000, not even 12,000. No, because it's like 4 months every year. Yeah. So this was a job that gave me about $10,000 a year. That was it. So, in that sense, I was like, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice because that is something that's secure. Yeah. And then I thought, what am I doing? This is insane. This is crazy. But for me, I think it wasn't just about saying I've betrayed painting for this, it's not making economic sense. No, it wasn't at all about that. Eventually, it was about me saying I have to stop feeling like I am two different people. Like, I am I'm going to take your case, but I am the carpenter or I am the painter. And there's going to be months or years in my life that I do carpentry. And then finally I get to painting. I told myself, no, sometimes I'm a dad and, I use a bunch of hours to just be with my kids. And, every single day I have to be a partner to my, girlfriend. And, there are times when I sit down and I paint. And for me, at least, the fact that those boundaries just started disappearing was super helpful for my mental health, like the way I perceived myself, because I just started seeing myself as, me. as me, and I could be, I could be dad, and then dad paints, and then suddenly if my kid interrupts me, I was like, instead of being like, oh, what the hell are you doing? I'm
Yeah.
painting, you can't interrupt me right now. It's like, oh, what do you want? And I can stop, and then I can keep painting. And it was so nice to just finally see that everything kind of is connected. So just going back to what you were saying, I'm glad that you found something that feels like, okay, I needed those carpentry skills, and you have like an awesome rack for your paintings right now. And but I would say, and I'm not judging you in any way, but I would say that, dude, that's just a moment in your life, and you felt the need for that, and it doesn't matter. Like, if it didn't manifest itself in any way in what in what you were doing when you were painting, it would still be totally fine. Like,
I know it's totally, and it's we're talking about immersion into studios and stuff, and it's the whole life is the immersion. So it took you teaching to realize what you're doing with this project right now is you're painting these things you want to paint, and because of your experience as a teacher, you're able to vocalize these things that people can engage with in a way because you know how to do it, and you're not trying to teach. It's just happening naturally, and you're incorporating aspects of your life and this and that. And so it's something, you're not forcing yourself to do anything in particular. It's just happening. Mm-hmm. And I know, for me with the carpentry thing, like, I mean, I have an obsession like with old farmhouses and stuff. Like, I don't paint them that much at all because I don't know how to. I'm almost scared that I haven't found a way to do it that feels good yet in a way, but it doesn't mean I don't interact with them. And I love being able to work on stuff like that. And, a dream of mine is to get this old, Wyeth farmhouse barn thing and make that my studio, and just, I just listen to the creak of the floors in the morning, and that's inspiring to me, or like a plaster wall that's cracking, being able to live in an environment like that, like, and be able to take care and foster that and bring it to life and keep it alive is really important to me. The same way of, like, finding a painting that's dying and trying to keep it alive, it's basically the same thing. And it's just using my hands. It's just like a tactile thing. And they're just different skills that, one thing I want to be doing is working on a really large scale. And I've been buying mantles, like fireplace mantles.
Sure. No, it makes sense. Yeah. No, it makes total sense.
So take the fireplace away. That is a amazing 4x6 foot frame. Fucking amazing frame. All it needs is the bottom. And I've been slowly restoring them because I want to have a whole series of these, like, almost like tabernacle things that have this experience of this hearth where energy was for decades, 100 years in this old house. And now I'm extricating that and implementing myself into that with my own painting and having my hand. And it's like, it feels so cool to be able to do that. And I needed to be able to know how to restore an old farmhouse. And the only way to do that was to be, being a carpenter. And so now that I've been doing that, I can finally do this project that I've been thinking about in my head for so long. And it just takes that experience.
It makes amazing sense for you. I mean that's one of those things where, if somebody's listening, it's like, oh, I could do that too. And it's like, yeah, you could do that too. But there's a big difference between somebody who that, project makes absolute sense to, and somebody who just likes the superficial value of just using something else as a frame, using a window.
Well, and the idea that I got for that was just like, if you ever looked at like a scorched fireplace, the way that the like the resin, the charcoal on the bricks kind of looks like these abstracted figures almost. You just see this, like, there's a tonality. And I remember just like walking into this house and seeing that one day and like being like, oh my God, like that's a figurative piece. That fireplace is a figurative piece. This is the paint, the structure is art, and I make paintings. So that's what I want to do with it. But yeah, it was just a natural culmination.
You're seeing figures everywhere, Tim.
Yeah.
The waves and the soot. That's just that. No, that's super nice. I was going to ask you something, like, because you've done a bunch of residencies, right? That's
Yeah.
also like a path you chose to take. Do you feel? And I know they've mostly have they been mostly towards the East Coast? Like, have you stuck to a certain area, or?
They have been mostly East Coast, and I've been realizing that I something I was actually going to do this year, but because of just the way that the year was, I ended up staying around because I wanted to go out. There was a residency out west that I was going to be doing, and my friend started, and I was going to kind of just see what happens out there. But yeah, they've been primarily East Coast.
Yeah, and I'm saying this because you're a Maynard, and do you feel like you're getting, because you are this, in my mind you're this amazing, like, nomadic artist, in a sense that you've been able to sort of, in a beautiful way, accept like where life takes you, and you settle in, and then you start working. And one of the things that me, as an observer, like as an outside observer, loves is that you're always going to be Tim. Like, I'm always going to be able to recognize like your DNA.
Unfortunately.
No, no, no. For me, it's a blessing, dude. But what's very cool is that there's always going to be this effect, of wherever you are in that moment of your life, in your painting in some way. And I've always, again, I don't know if it's been tough for you, but I've always, I don't want to say enjoy it. It's not like I enjoy your suffering, but I love that this, that there's these passages of time in your life that manifest themselves through your painting. And I'm what I'm getting to is like, do you feel like you're finding a home, like you're finding a place, or are you comfortable just like saying, no, I'm a traveler, like?
It's really interesting. And I didn't mean to cut you off there. But
No,
I
don't worry.
it's so I don't think we have ever talked about this, but yeah, like whenever I've gone to these places, it yeah, it is a torture almost because I get so overwhelmed by this just immediate beauty where I'm just like, I could watch the light fallen from this windowsill for the next 30 years of my life and not know how to properly capture it.
Hmm.
And when I go into a new environment, I see all of these things where, I am a nomad and just in the loner sense when I go to these places, like I have to be alone to experience these things because I go manic. I'm suddenly trying to capture, say, even going somewhere for a weekend and the sun's starting to set and it looks kind of pretty. I somehow turn into this like wild beast where like I've got my easels and my cameras and my iPhone and my eyes, and I'm trying to run around and capture the sunset from 80 different places because
Hmm.
I know I've only got this finite amount of time, and I wish I could spend my entire life watching it from this one hill or something.
Hmm.
And how do I know where I'm supposed to be just to watch this thing, and where I am is exactly where I'm supposed to be, kind of a thing. But like I get overwhelmed with
Hmm.
wanting to have that life right there at that moment and have nothing else. But then I realize, as much as I want to do that, I want to constantly be having these new experiences. So I've had to find a way to like somehow just like immediately immerse myself in an environment. It is a very, it's a super, and I'm not like a hoity-toity guy, but like it's a super spiritual experience for me. Like place is very spiritual, and so I like try just to just immediately become super sensitive to all of my surroundings, to uh, all of my senses, to kind of remember all of these things. And I'm like, uh, I'm just running around manic until the nighttime, just trying to get this and that, and then like the next day, I kind of know where to go to and what experience I want to have. But like, yeah, I try to like, it's the you're quintessential artist, and I loath for saying this, but I mean, take your Andrew Wyeth. Like, the reason why he made some pretty baller observations of his environments is because he lived in. There's no European sketchbook of Andrew Wyeth. There's no trip to France. He was in Maine and Pennsylvania.
That
period. There's two places, wandering to his neighbors' yards. Like, that was it. And that's why his work is so powerful, because he knew that stuff. And so I am not that person, because I would not be content having just those two environments, but I really tried. It's just like, how can I encapsulate 30 years in 3 days? Or I've got a month. And usually during the residencies that I've done, I am super frustrated and I don't actually get that much work done in a way, because I'm just trying to adjust to my environment. I could immediately go into a studio and close the door and start painting portraits or start painting something. But to make the most of what the experience is with a place, I like to wander and just drive and go down these roads and get lost and see things that I wouldn't have been able to find otherwise. And I enjoy that it's only for a brief amount of time, because then I can come back to my studio where I feel like I know all the nuances and I feel comfortable, and I can then download my brain here in my little gestation pod and be able to pull out these experiences and make something from that. And so it's trying to capture it's just an interesting point that you made, feeling comfortable and wandering, and just the fact that you see that kind of torture. It's like I want to express these things so much to people that might not even notice the beauty of the little subtleties of surroundings. And so that's why I'm documenting and trying to put out there. I feel like that's my job, is to access these moments that most people might not see, because they're not compelled to constantly be wandering around and trespassing in abandoned properties or whatever. But
no, and I guess I was saying this because I'm being perfectly honest. I profoundly admire people that do plein air painting and that have that instinct that you were describing, that they just get to a new place and they can immediately set up. I'm not saying I'm probably oversimplifying this, but they can set up and they can say, I can pick this spot and I can paint this. And, if I'm in Tuscany, I just did a painting about Tuscany and it feels like that. And I'm super sensitive to color. There are those, again, extraordinary people that can just say, I will have this experience through paint and I can immediately do this. I can access, these things, these stimuli through paint very, very quickly. I think that what I love about your work, and I'm not shy about saying that I really love this about your work, is that it does feel different. And just listening to you now, I've always tried to figure out, well, why does it feel different? Because we always speak about something being honest and genuine or driven by this honest intent. And when I see your work, I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's the definition of it. I don't know how to put it into words, because I don't know if I'm supposed to know how to put it into words, but I feel it. Whenever I see something that feels honest, I know it. It's one of those things, I'll know it when I see it. I mean, under a good light, that definition. But what you were saying right now, the fact that there is, you do have a need to paint, but it's not like this, just go there and set up and paint and that's it. It's this, it's this whole encompassing thing that you have to have this experience that is exogenous to painting almost, has, sure, it will land on painting. Painting is how you ground that experience, but there are so many other forces pulling you, and there's so many other things that
painting is like we said before, painting is the inevitable. I'm going out to these places to make that study. That's the reason for me to get my butt into the car or start hiking and do this and that, because I'm going to make a study. But it's that journey along the way. It's that process of getting to that location even and getting lost on the way there, not knowing where I'm going to paint. that it's really inspiring. And like it yeah it's knowing that I can do a plein air painting wherever and it can be a certain thing lends me the ability to know that I can get lost and wherever I end up, or I will end up wherever something captures me and I can do a thing there. And so it's taken doing a lot of these studies to realize that I can do that anywhere. And I want it to be a place that harkens to me. And even within that, like, I get super despondent all the time because I'm experiencing this thing, and no matter what I do, it's just like there's no way I could possibly capture how beautiful this thing is. Not even the scene in front of me, but like the thing that I'm hearing while I'm doing that, or when I turn around and just this thing like, oh, I should have painted this, or like, why did I even do that? And like, wanting to just, throw the easel to the ground and, get a job at McDonald's or something. And I'm like, fuck it, I screwed up. It's frustrating to think that I couldn't capture how beautiful the scene was, but then I realized that like it's not about that. Like I tried, and the thing that I captured was what I could do, and I need to be. It's coming to terms with like I got a great experience out of it. I saw this thing, and I made this object from it, and feeling really proud that like I wouldn't have been there to experience it the way that I did unless I was making that thing. So it comes back to that inevitable, the painting is the catalyst for the experience, but the experience is the life that is the inspiration for the painting.
Right.
So it just goes back and forth.
I remember I was not advising. I don't like that word, but I always feel like it's accompanying. But I was accompanying this student of mine, this former student of mine, who's a brilliant artist. But Daniel Acuña is his name. And he was doing his thesis project. And he was saying how you could understand the role of the artist. And I mean, this is not generalizing, but, in two different ways. It was either that story of Turner that he tied himself to the mast and then he went out to sea. So he wanted to feel the waves crashing in his face. And that's what he wanted to paint in the end. So it was that part, that side of, just man being swallowed up by nature. And the other, shore would be the Friedrich painting, the guy where we see the back of the guy just contemplating, this huge, vast openness. Yeah. So one side was about experiencing, I guess, and the other side was about contemplation. And I thought it was always, I thought it was brilliant of him to have these two. I mean, they're not the two roads that you can take when you're trying to experience nature in a way, but I think there were two beautiful examples of how artists have understood their place in nature. And for some reason, when I always think of your work, I think you're like both of them, because I totally understand that. When people look at you, and if they look at you just painting, you're balancing yourself on this rock, waves crashing like in front of you. It's like, oh my God, like this is perilous. This is like, this is somebody who's about to become that, story about Turner. Like I have to be so near, these crashing waves that I have to experience that. But, in a sense, you're also giving yourself like the space, even if it's a mental space, to like reflect upon, this vastness of nature. And you're trying to almost like out of body look at this thing and say, wow, this, how do I eventually translate this into painting?
Well, and the really interesting thing with that too is so with Turner, that visceral experience, that's about like an adrenaline pumping, like, and through that, I feel like it's less him, or the way I would interpret that tall tale, or, is because of that experience, he was faced with a mortality. Like, this could end badly. And so within that, like, your adrenaline's pumping and your body is going to remember the experience. This, like, near death, like, you're engaged in the experience so much more, like you're in it, and there's your fight or flight mechanism is engaged, and so you're tense, but you're because of that you're so observant of all the nuances because you need to know how to escape if you're going to or what's going to happen. And at the same time, like, the reason why I love going out in storms and stuff isn't because I'm a masochist. Like, it's because of this overwhelming, like the Friedrich painting, this vastness of nature. There's like a deep sadness or somberness, but it's a poignant, like, isolation that I feel in nature at times, like when I'm alone in the wilderness. And like my one of my favorite things is just being in the woods at dusk or something when the light's kind of fading. There's just enough light where everything is slightly muted and it's not dark, but everything is like the same tone. The trees in the woods that you're in is almost the same color as the sky. You can still see you're going forward. There are still kind of shadows. And in a few minutes, it's going to get really dark. And you better know where you are, how you're going to get back, where your flashlight is. And you have to think about this dread of like, oh my goodness, it's dark and I'm alone and I'm scared. But right before that, it is really beautiful. And gorgeous. You just want that moment to go forever. And in order to truly experience that moment, you need to understand that right after that, you're going to be scared. And you need to come to terms with the fact that in order to fully immerse in that moment of dusk, you just you gotta be okay with what's gonna happen. And there's like a fight or flight almost, because you know that you've got to survive. And just like Turner being on the mast, like it's your adrenaline then starts to pump and you start to really think about all of these beautiful intricacies of the environment and understanding it more and getting this literal physicality of memory because your body is there in it. And so I think it's possible to definitely inhabit both. There's a calmness and there's also a calmness in the storm, and they're not mutually exclusive. They can be combined.
That's awesome, because like right now I was saying that how very hard for me it is to try and put into words why I think, like why I feel, and I guess this is something purely instinctual and obviously subjective because it's something that hits me. But when I see some of your work, it just feels different. It feels completely different than saying, like, if you were doing like some workshop, just taking people out, hey, we're gonna have a near-death painting experience. Let's all go. It's gonna be fun. You just tie yourself to this rock and let's go painting. And I'm sure people want to do that. I'm sure people would throw money in your face if you could do something like that for them, because I know that they would want. They like, I'm not saying that's the superficial part of it, but I'm sure that would be the like. But that's the most like popular, attractive experience.
Yeah, that's almost like not an escape room, but like it's like you can't. It's almost like you're going to a fairgrounds. You're going to take this roller coaster ride. It's like I can't plan. Like when I do have those experiences, like I can't plan it. All I can do is be ready for when it's going to happen. And then be able to go and do it. And so it's like it's impossible to be able to think about, because I've done workshops before, and it's kind of like oh, well, this is the 4-hour painting. It's like, well, this is the approach to landscape painting. And if you keep on doing this, at some point in time, there's going to be this beautiful, gut-wrenching experience with this dynamism of nature and this and that. But you can't, I can't guarantee there's going to be rocks to strap yourself to, and and so it's going to be, you could fake it, and I wish that I could, because it'd be great to get all that done on my face, but I want to be real to it, and you just never know what's going to happen. It's like.
It's one of those things that I think I mean, I'm not closing any doors, but unfortunately it's one of those things that you can't really betray, because that's the essence of your painting is just what you describe, and I love to talk to you because that's when you try to put it into words, that like that's what's underneath, like that's what's bubbling underneath your paintings. And that's what sometimes it's like impossible to grasp and to say, how do I quantify this? And then the answer is you can't. You're not supposed to quantify. You're not supposed to make a recipe out of this.
And the thing is too, yeah, and so like again, it's about doing the thing. And I know when I first started plein air painting is because I have a lot of energy at times, and I feel like I'm constantly pacing in the studio, like not knowing what to do, and I just had to run out one day and just like paint outside because I wanted to be outside. It wasn't that I was getting any lack of ideas in the studio, but I just didn't know what to do. And if you're only in the studio, you can imagine things that could be paintings, but they might not have that evocative truth to it, in a way. Not that paintings need to have a truth, but there's just, in order to make it feel more emotional, it's great to have something. And I remember actually this one time I was out painting, and it wasn't a distinctly beautiful scene, but there was a crazy like lightning storm that came on when the night came, and I was packing up, and it was super intense. And I remember this was like 10 years ago. I remember I was driving back, and I saw like this lightning bolt come down and just illuminate in the rain this like field, and I was like, what is out there in the field? So I pulled over and I ran out, and there is this field on this cow farm that has a sheer cliff going down to the water, and you kind of look onto the tide, and so it was pitch black out, and
not a great idea, by the way.
Not a great idea, but I was just I was like, what? I need to figure out. I saw something, and then the lightning came down again, and for a split second,
oh my God, Tim!
I saw like 100 white chairs looking onto the cliffs, because there was going to be a wedding there the next day.
What?
But so it was all set up, but just this scene of this cliff with 100 chairs facing the cliff and no one in them, illuminated with lightning, and I was like, that's kind of awesome. And I would not have had that idea. I didn't make a painting of it, but I still remember because I want to. I sketched it down, I came back, and I was like, I would never have that idea in 100 years of this empty outdoor scene of a wedding gone awry or something, or like a ghost wedding at night in a thunderstorm, without having done a painting of the rocks before, so I had to.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's almost I don't have those experiences, but
well, you have different experience. Yeah.
That could have been like your Daffy Duck, you can only do this trick once story. Yeah, you just run into this field, open field.
Where, ran too far, just struck. To me, yeah.
But no. But I do have those experiences with nature that it's like, the way I phrase it to myself is like, I could have never in a million years imagined this. Like nature is always going to be, it has the upper hand, always. Like your mind could be boundless, and then you suddenly understand that, no, like the universe, the arbitrary nature of the universe is something that we can't really grasp, and we can only be like witnesses, like momentary witnesses to like these incredible moments. But you know what I like too? That it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to land on a painting, and maybe this could be. Yeah, this could have been the great, or I'm not wishing this onto you, but this could be like the greatest painting that you never painted.
Exactly, and that's what, and I recall it to you because I haven't painted it. It's been 10 years, but I still remember it. Maybe I'm just supposed to have it in my mind of something, and maybe it'll haunt me forever, but it's me going to try to create this thing, and something else will happen on it.
It makes sense given the nature of like a bunch of white chairs just facing a cliff in the middle of a storm.
Haunting. And it was just for a millisecond, just flashing of this.
That's crazy. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing. I'm sure movies are done that way. Like a director can see that and it's like, oh, we can build a whole movie based on this.
I bet. Yeah, I'm sure I'll be like sitting down and watching a Tarkovsky movie, and it'll have like that exact scene. Like, fuck you, Tarkovsky. Like,
But what's kind of awesome, at least awesome for me, but because I've grown to understand that not everything has to be a painting. Like I think I remember a point in my life that every time I would look at my children, I was like, oh, I got to paint this. Oh, I got to paint this because, I've become far more of a, well, we are kind of the same in that sense, even though our universes are completely different. But it's like intimate painting, it's a very small universe that you really, dive into. And my universe has become, these kind of walls that I inhabit and just the commonplace of me and my family, me and my kids and my girlfriend. And there were times in my life that I was like, oh, fuck, I should have painted this, or I should paint this. This is a great painting. Like I equated everything that I would experience with a painting, with, the potential of it becoming a painting. And at some point I was like, okay, you got to stop this. This is ridiculous. I remember when I was young, I had this fantasy that I would say that the best camera would be just one that was embedded in your eyes or in your brain. And your shutter would just be, your eyes, and you just blink at that moment where you want to capture that image. So you would have like this Black Mirror kind of shutter, and you would say like, oh, I want to keep this. And you experience it, and you have like now this evidence of this thing that you wanted, this picture that you wanted to take. And at some point I was like, no, photography is actually very, very different. There is actually this beautiful part of photography that is just about carrying this camera, and it's about, wanting to take this photograph. It's not just about having this, very natural experience that comes with observation, and that's about it. And I think at some point I divorced myself from that. I don't know. It's from that impulse to say that my life is only going to make sense as a painter if I evidence that life through painting. Like it doesn't matter. Like we should be able to say, oh, dude, I had this incredible experience yesterday. I saw this, and you described this incredible scene. And, it could be like, in your mind, it could be like, oh, that would have been like a perfect church painting. But you go like, yeah. And then I turned the page and that was it. And maybe, maybe you end up painting the painting, and maybe it's the best painting.
I feel the same way. I had to divorce myself from that too. It's because if you're considering everything in your life as, oh, I should have done a painting of this and this and this, you're always painting and you're not engaged in the moment. You're not having this experience. We're always thinking about like, oh God, I got to make sure I've got my brushes ready to go because here's the thing. And then you're stepping away rather than like hugging your kids. You're like, okay, step back. Gonna do a painting of you now, son. Like it's, while it's important to understand the beauty of that, yeah, not everything is supposed to be a painting. Same, and the thing you bring up with photography is really integral in a way because first of all, like trademark. This is speaking of evidence. Like this is the evidence. So when iPhone when Apple tries to make this like implant in your brain, like this video shows that you're gonna get $1 million for this idea. But like if you think about, because I know you used to do a lot of very traditional photography, and you know your way around a camera. Like I've been teaching myself traditional photography, and I know with the advent of iPhones and digital cameras, like everyone is photographing everything. And when I started doing film, I'm like, oh God, I've only got how many exposures, or this roll of 120 millimeter that cost me $12. I can get 12 images out of it. Okay, I guess I better really make sure I don't waste it, and I'm going to try to document the things that really feel like something to me. And when you think, when you look back at, your albums of your childhood photos and stuff, there's some good ones, and there's some bad ones, but they're all so meaningful because you remember, like, I remember that day, or like, oh, what was the story, and oh, this is cool. This jogged my memory. Like, I feel like there are, for every one photo of us back then, there are 10,000 photos of a child doing whatever now. or anything, there's 10,000 photos of an omelet instead of, one meaningful image of a piece of food or something. And so it's
Hmm.
just, that was a really weird,
No, let's go with it. No, I can run with that.
but yeah, so like it's suddenly the photography loses its importance. If you're photographing everything, nothing's
Mm.
important. And if you're painting everything, nothing's an important painting, because it's just, you're not actually engaged. You're just frivolously, doing this thing that makes you feel like you're doing something worthwhile, but in the end, it's kind of like a band-aid. You're performing the action, but you're not actually getting anything worthwhile out of it.
Yeah, you know what's weird, and I'm trying to figure things out. I'm not afraid to say, like, I don't even know how to answer this question when I pose it to myself, but I know the feeling that is spurring this question, and I know that it is real. So maybe, what you just said is actually helping me not figure things out, but just add to, all the variables that I have to figure, that I have to work with in the attempts of trying to figure this out. But I want to paint so that painting means nothing to me. And
Yeah,
I know this sounds ridiculous. I just want painting to become sort of invisible. And I'm not saying it has nothing to do with skill. Nothing, absolutely nothing to do with skill. Like, oh, I can do it so well that I don't even notice it anymore. No, 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 no. It has nothing to do with that, because I know deep down that this is like, I think we're all like Sisyphus. Like, this is the rock we were meant to bear. Painting is always going to be just insanely, insanely hard, and that's about it. Um, but at some point, I just don't want to be aware of it. I just don't. I really, really don't. I want to have like such a almost like precious connection with it, that I feel that what I'm seeking, I guess, is to just have this experience with painting, where I paint things, but I don't. I'm not judging them as paintings. I have no expectations of them as paintings. Like, I think what I've been trying to do is separate myself from the expectation that is the physical object of painting. And it's
yeah.
been super, super hard. And maybe I don't phrase it the right way, and maybe I don't communicate it the right way, because I don't really, I'm having a hard time myself.
What you want is, you want it to be such because this is different than when I'm talking about painting everything. Like, you want it to be a thing where you're making this painting as part of your life. You're doing it. It's not that you're disengaged, but it's this thing where, at the end of the day, when someone asks you, or no, so basically over the course of the day, you were doing this and that, and nothing out of the ordinary happened. And then
Hmm.
at the end of the day, someone asks you what you did. You're like, oh, I, went to the park with my kids, made some lunch, went for a walk in the afternoon and watched some shows at night. When really, during that time, you also made 4 paintings, but you were
Right.
so unaware of it because it was so integrally linked to the experience that it didn't dawn on you that you were picking up your brushes, laying out your palette, doing this painting, because it doesn't spark in your mind that, like, oh, I made this painting that I was kind of happy with or whatever. It's just a thing that was part of it. And it wasn't that you were, like I was saying earlier, it wasn't that you were like trying to make sure, oh, I got to make sure I captured everything in paint. It just happened and it was
Hmm.
there. And it wasn't that it was an unimportant thing, but it's so enmeshed in your psyche, or your yeah, I don't know the best way to describe it either, but like, you want it to be like, it's not that it's inconsequential, but that it doesn't uh, it doesn't become a thing where you need to then judge or critique or think about what it was that was painted. It's just a thing that occurred, and
Right.
yeah, there's
Oh,
something
dude.
beautiful in that.
Oh, dude, that's so nice. Thank you. Thank you for that, because I am struggling in the sense that I do believe in it, and what you just described is like, it's perfect. I don't, I want it to almost exist with no boundaries with everything else that I do, in my day to day. So, right now I have my kids, and they go to like these virtual classes, and I have to be open to saying, oh, my daughter needs me and she needs help with this homework, and that has to occupy the same space as painting. It actually, it does. Like, it's not this thing, you know how people go to like yoga retreats and you know, they're in this beautiful space where they can just totally separate themselves from their lives and just to have this wonderful experience. But the thing is, then they go back and they live in Jersey and they have to deal with, you know, and they have to deal with going, you know, through the tunnel so they could go to work, you know, in the city every single day. And they're like, what the hell? Why can't I tap into that amazing experience at retreat I had a month ago? Yeah, because no, that's not meant to be that way. Like, you're supposed to carry this peace of mind with you, regardless of where you are. And in many ways, like, I want that. Like, I want to feel that. I want to feel that these things, they don't, like, there's no specific compartment to any of these actions. It just kind of, they all blend into each other. So it's not like the peak of my day was, oh, I finally got to paint. No, painting is the moment where I reflect the most, that's for sure. But it doesn't mean that, oh, wow, you know, I have to spend, you know, 4 hours with my kids, like, ugh. And now finally, like, this is my oasis. I can finally get to what I enjoy the most, which is painting. Like, I don't ever want to see my life as that. And I guess the trouble I've had is just to try and identify, okay, but how do I care about something so much that I don't care about it anymore? Like, how does that happen? How do I teach myself that, you know, that? And it's awesome, but I don't, you know, sometimes I try to explain it to people and they go like, okay, that's, you know, it sounds like bullshit. So, you know, I'm not gonna, yeah,
no,
it sounds ridiculous.
It's a really poignant observation for that, you know, I don't think I can do a good job off the cuff with trying to describe more of like but I feel you with that, where it's just like, you want it to become such an important thing where you don't recognize that it's a thing, because there are so many other things that take precedence that it's almost like it bears resemblance to the phrase, like, if you love someone, let them free. Like, if you truly love someone even more, you're gonna let them do what they want to do, have their own life. And so if you truly love painting, you're gonna let it be in your life and not be aware of it. Kind of a
right.
Come back to it. I'll dwell on this. We'll have another conversation.
But I'm guessing, and this is and this, I'm speculating, but I'm guessing, like, you know, I'm guessing that when you go to those, you know, to those spaces, to those rocks that you paint in, I'm sure that the first moment you did it, you're like, oh, what the hell am I doing? Like, you know, if the tide starts, you know, getting higher and waves start crashing, you know, closer to me, these rocks can be super slippery and I'm done. Like, this is, you know, this is potentially very, very stupid. So I'm guessing at those first moments of painting, you had to be like painfully aware of everything, of all your surroundings. And, but I'm sure that eventually it's not that you got cocky and it's not just you're like, oh, I can do this in my sleep. This is cake now. But you kind of learn how to live with fear. You know that, yeah, you know, this could happen, but I recognize it now. And it's just my partner. It's not overwhelming now. I mean, but I just know it's there.
It's just there, and I don't think about it. And that's like, in a way, you know, what we're talking about, like with Turner and just like physical adrenaline and stuff. Like, when I think the reason why I can always kind of gravitate to water is, like, not only is it this thing where, like, I am on this precarious perch in a way, although, you know, luckily I've never had any issues, and I feel pretty confident having done it enough that, like, I know how to get out there and do all this and that. But I've also got, because of the ebb and flow of the tides, unlike someplace else in nature where, like, you may not feel the rush to have to finish something, like, I've got an hour before this water is going to start getting up here and like, you know, wash everything away. So I've got there is an alarm clock, there's a timer, a countdown, and if I don't do this, if I'm not, you know, physically aware, like, it's not going to end well. And so I have to have this physical intensity or just acknowledgement of my surroundings and be confronted with that, because it's this natural alarm clock that helps me It's like I gotta get this done. Otherwise, I could spend all day in a pastoral field or something, And granted,
Hmm.
yeah, you're at the whim of the sunlight and the shadows that changes. But I mean, I hate painting on sunny days. So that's never gonna happen to me. But like, and that's more so. People actually, it's funny. People uh, constantly. I feel like I run this strange dual effect where people see my work, and when they see me at openings or something, they're expecting this surly 70-year-old man who despises, like, my third wife divorced me and took the house. I'm like, I'm not really that yet, but
Almost there. Almost
almost
there.
there.
Yeah.
But it's not that I love dark, somber, sad, gray, whatever. There's a romance in that, but like I love painting on gray days because uh, it's nature's diffused light. It's consistent
Hmm.
light all day long. You're not dealing
Right.
with the shadows, and you can take more time to look at this thing, and it's not the harshness of light where plein air painting in daylight is just I'm uncomfortable enough as a person in my own physicality where like when you're looking at this bright, super lit thing, and then you're going back to your canvas and it's dark and your eyes dilate, and then you look at your
Right.
palette and it's glaring and you're putting it up there. And it just doesn't feel comfortable. I love being outside all day. I love the sun. I love anything to do with it, but it doesn't mean that because it's nice out, you should paint. Like it's you want to feel comfortable, and I feel more comfortable when it's overcast and I'm not thinking about the sweat that's pouring from my forehead and like the burn. It's just yeah. So I don't gravitate towards gray because I'm a sad, depressed person or something. It's just because it's really nice to paint in.
It's amazing how people just equate those things, right?
Yeah,
Like saturation. I mean, I've always gathered that that's like a primeval thing, like purely instinctual. The fact that we associate like saturation and color with like just flowers blossoming and life,
yeah,
and grayness is just dread. It's almost like, oh, okay, it's about to be night, or it's about, or if a field, if there was a crop that died, it looks gray. and
yeah.
and we I think as a species, we have kept that, and we've associated that with just feelings. And I've had shows where I've also painted like exclusively like almost monochromatic paintings, and people are like, those are beautiful, but what is wrong? Like, you can tell us
Yeah, yeah,
what's going on. Like, we want you to be happy. We're waiting for those days that you can paint with like super. And I love how people say like shorthand, super nice color. And
yeah.
in their mind, colors is just associated with saturated colors. And I don't know, I was born this way, I guess. But in many ways, I think that I'm sort of like you, that my home city, like Bogota, it's a very gray city, and I fucking love it. I love my gray city.
But the thing is, even within that, like you've got it's that grayness, so that when you've got that splash of like really light, robin's egg blue wall or something, or this mural, like it stands out. And like you just touched on so many things, like yeah, people equate happiness with color and stuff. And when I see like bright sunny days, like it's nice, but there's nothing. Not that the painting needs to be somber and dark to make you feel something, but like there's something, a weightiness to gray or darker tonality or something, that like there's a heaviness that makes you think it's plotting in a way or something, but you want there to be a volume. Like happiness and
Mm.
bright blue is like a helium balloon. There's like not much, like, oh, it's happy, you smile. You don't think about why you're smiling. You're just
Mm.
happy, and that's great. And there's no reason not to smile. But the thing is, the people don't consider is just a tangent, but it leads into something, I guess, is like
Go.
this gray is the circle of life. And like the world goes through winter and nighttime every day, and winter every season or every year, because there needs to be the circle of life. You've got to have death in order to appreciate the
Right.
brightness, and to and as someone who does monochrome, you realize you're not just painting with black and white. There
Right.
are, to make those color combinations, you're using a really subtle nuance of color. There's a little bit of life within that death that makes it interesting. And so that grayscale has this beautiful thing that still gets you to look. And there's something intriguing within that, because there is a slight saturation that's muted that you as the artist found a way to handle. And it is that is the winter season. And I think that more sensitive types can realize that, because they realize that from the winter, you can then juxtapose that with just a splash of color or a canvas next to it, and suddenly there's a whole gamut of emotion that you wouldn't get if it was a full gallery of bright saturated fluorescence and stuff, which can be awesome.
Right.
But you've got to have a balance. You've got to have your death with life to feel anything. You've got to have your gray with color to feel anything, and you can create the grays from color. It's just about the combinations of it. And yeah, people always equate this like sadness with gray, and it's like, no, it's actually helping. I just feel more. It's not sadness. It makes me appreciate the bright blue. I just don't need to paint the bright blue. It's just
Right.
yeah.
I remember for me, it was because unfortunately, art history and Western, art history, you're kind of taught that's, the people equate landscape painting. They don't really think of Courbet, for example.
Yeah.
They don't immediately say, oh, Corot or Courbet or those are, landscape painters. They immediately jumped to, Eurocentric impressionist painting.
Yeah.
Like that is, and because it is, that sort of painting, it's about the, capturing of light. And I always tell people, well, light was actually a variable that has been painted for hundreds of years before that. So it's not like they invented light. It's not like they saw light for the first time. Like every great painter or great, naturalist kind of, I guess, educated in some sort of classicism painter has always been aware of light, but we just don't like necessarily equate it with direct sunlight.
Well, yeah,
and I remember just.
Sorry, you go.
I remember looking at impressionist painting and saying these are cool, but I don't feel. I'm not saying like I can't recognize the feats of painting that they are. There's Monet paintings that are just absolutely out of this world. He was a brilliant painter, but for some reason they don't move me that much.
They don't stick with you.
Right. I see them. I understand them contextually. I connect with them probably as a painter, but I don't have the same connection that I do as when I look at a Whistler, when I look at other tonalist painters, that I'm like, okay, this is different. Like your body and your mind is telling you this is different. And this doesn't have to be true for everyone, but I think those are the moments where you realize, this is the painter that you are. This is the human being, like the sensitive, like a sensible human being that you are. You have to acknowledge those feelings. You don't have to, just because it's color, just because people are deeming it as this beautiful thing, this natively beautiful thing, it doesn't mean that you have to sort of accommodate yourself to that. Because I remember just, looking at these darker, duller paintings, and I was like saying, I don't know what's going on, but I'm finally connecting with landscape painting. Like for me, I'm not going to say this aversion to landscape painting, but for the longest time, I just didn't connect with anything. And it was, it spoke about my ignorance and not knowing, many of these amazing painters. But as soon as I saw the painting that I was searching for, that I was meant to, be moved by, I was like, oh my God, it's almost like feeling like, oh, there's other people like me.
Yeah.
There's been people like me across history that find, like what you were saying, here in Bogota happens like at 5:55 to like 6:05. That moment where, for example, for me, it was like finishing class because I would teach until that moment. And I had to take the bus. I had to like flag a bus to go home. And that moment in time, I was completely blind because everything was so samey. It was this kind of velvety, light mauve-ish color, like that everything was, I was like, I can't see. this is, and to me, it was just insanely satisfying to live that moment. I mean, it was horrible because I could only see my bus as soon as it was like right in front of me, and I didn't have time to flag it down. But I was like, this is incredible. Like this moment in time. It's not like, midday where the sun is out, if it's a clear sky, you're like, okay, this is going to be the same until like 3:00, basically. Like the shadows are going to move. The shapes of the shadows are going to move, but it's like a blue sky, sun is out. That's about it. But that moment in time, I was like, oh my God, this is like, what is this universe? Like, how is this possible? Like, did you turn blind at one moment of, during the day that lasts like 5 minutes?
Well, and it's crazy too because, so like the thing with the Impressionist painters, I think it captures people because, color, it's all about, the dappled paint, they can capture these amazing effect with light because they're interplaying color dabs next to each other, and it's capturing a moment. It's not really capturing deeper warmth of anything. It's capturing a moment, and they're out there painting this beautiful scene. It reminds me of a picnic. It's like, oh, it's a picnic. This is great. And it's not that they aren't amazing, talented painters, and there are so many beautiful canvases from it. But you think about, you're talking about the bus like emerging from this thing, and like Delacroix, the way he used to paint was, he's not really known as a landscape painter. Like here, there are landscapes in all of his, figurative pieces and everything. But like he would paint from midtones. He'd have this midtone, and he'd bring out highlights and push down things. And it's because things are emerging from this midtone that there's a deeper sense of tonality. And there's something that kind of stays with you. It's not flashy little daubs of paint here and there. There's this rich ground that it comes from, just like the dusk scene where there's this thing where things emerge and come at you. And it's kind of that's the process of that painting technique. And I think Courbet also painted on a very rich, dark ground. I mean, he has certainly more darker tonal paintings anyways, but there's, again, it ends up being this like weightiness, this heftiness that just literally captures your eye. Like the more it's scientific, the more that you're gonna glaze, like it literally takes light that quarter of a millisecond longer to pass through that glaze and bounce off of the dark than the opaque light that keeps you focused a little bit more on that area, and having more of that depth and richness of midtone is a beautiful thing. And when I think about Corot and all these things, I think about their amazing sensibility of light. And the only reason that can happen is because it's amongst this shadowy element, or it's not a chiaroscuro thing, but like it's almost like the process of the painting and how it was made creates a deeper warmth to it. That you can get a better experience from. If you think about it I guess it's going to come down to an analogy, or I'm thinking of it at the moment like this, where, painting can be a spiritual, it can be a religious experience, in a way, when you look at the thing and you're moved and you really have that thing, that feeling. And if you think about, I mean, I'm not religious at all, but I've gone into a few chapels in my life, and but like I remember, like when I was in Italy or something, specifically in Italy and these old chapels in Maine and stuff. It's all dim. It's these dim, quiet, musky interiors with light streaming in, from these high arching windows, illuminating elements. And you feel you're immersed in this womb. You're like in this place that makes you feel something. And then when I think about these, huge auditorium, Walmart churches with totally sunlit skies, like, yeah, it's beautiful. You can see the blue sky during the ceremony or something, but like you don't get that feeling of this intimacy. And there's something more intimate about the Corots and the Courbets, any painter that has a C as a name, rather than the impressionist painters that are amazing. It's just a different, and I love them all. It's just a different emotional sensibility that comes with it. And it just so happens that I think for me and for you and other people, it's a deeper emotional sense that you get with these other painters that
Right.
employ more of a tonal and full spectrum of color and lack of color and all these different things.
Yeah, it's almost it's like that. It's probably the worst invention ever, but you can totally understand why they did it. But in Rome, when you're looking at the Caravaggio paintings, and they installed those machines where you put a
Put the
quarter
euros
in,
in.
a euro in, and it, these bright yellow lights are now burning this gorgeous painting that was in front of you.
Yeah.
It's terrible because you're almost not you're given the chance to not experience the painting how it was meant to be experienced.
Exactly. Your eyes are supposed to adjust to the light and the darkness.
Right. And and genius painters, they know that that's the setting for their paintings, and obviously Caravaggio's like an absolute genius, and that's the way they designed their paintings. It was this gorgeous atmosphere, like smoky atmosphere, where these figures emerged. And I'm guessing, like, I can't inhabit the body of somebody, in the 1600s looking at these paintings, but I'm sure it must have been just this literally like this religious experience, this overly spiritual experience and especially for people in Rome, when they see that, I'm sure that they felt like that is the material version of, the word of this, the spoken word that comes from, the Pope and the priests.
This is inevitable
Jesus,
thing.
like, right. This is like the spiritual, taking place now, like materializing itself.
Well, I think that's probably where the word comes from, where that religious experience comes from, is because of the paintings. Sorry, I just got a phone call. Because of the paintings.
Don't worry.
Because of the paintings in the chapels,
Right.
and because back in the 16th century, all through this time, like, you didn't have those illuminated lights, and so you're in these environments where it's dim, and slowly these figures emerge to you, and it's not just like, imagine seeing like I put many euro to see those Caravaggios when I was in Italy and stuff, and like, it wasn't the same as going to this chapel. And I remember going to this one chapel and it had this really dim like Ribera painting, and I was like, oh my god. And although I wanted to see more of it, I knew that if I did, I wouldn't enjoy it, because it would be it would require fluorescence, and it would transform the space, and it's a full sensory thing. I didn't want to hear the buzz of the lights. I didn't want to hear the clink. I wanted to just be there in this simplistic environment that had this depth of emotive smoke to it. And it's one of the worst inventions ever. You're right.
No, and I guess it speaks about it would speak about, or it speaks about the painter's willingness to make a ton of sacrifices.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure if Caravaggio was told, no, just paint that brighter, or just show this off a lot more, like, he's obviously capable of doing every one of those things.
Yeah.
But at some point, it's like, okay, this is for a greater good, you know, and a greater good understood as just, how is this painting supposed to be viewed, and how is this painting supposed to be?
This actually reminds me of since we talked about Turner. I'm sure you saw the Turner movie with the guy that looks like a frog, and great actor though. But he just sure. But and there was a scene when they showed the patrons. They were going to look at his paintings, right? And they're like, okay, so now you just stay in this room, and we're going to blow the candlelight out, and then we'll open you this illumination. And so there was a whole process about how to properly view his paintings. It had to be in the right light. And I know for me, like, it is about the light. Like, the reason why I didn't paint the walls gray in here and stuff so I could be like an atelier kind of thing. It's just about the mood. And I love coming to the studio in the morning and having the dim light from the window and not seeing everything, and I just want to experience that forever. I just love like this energy of the day awakening, and I don't want to just flip on the switch and have everything there at once. That would ruin the mood. It would, just because you can have light doesn't mean it should be there.
Dude, that space, your space feels like your paintings. I mean, I don't want to say it's like a chicken and egg thing.
It feels unresolved and unfinished. Is that what?
No, well, that too, but no. It's just that now when I'm looking at you, I see your painting in the background. I mean, it's not a painting. I'm not talking about subject matter. It's just that, like, it makes absolute sense. It's almost like I remember the first time I went to Amsterdam and I saw the smaller windows that these houses would have, and and how they taxed people, for window sizes. And so only rich, very, very rich people could have large windows. And I was like, well, that's Rembrandt. Of course that makes sense. Imagine all your light coming from this tiny little window.
Yeah.
That makes absolute sense. He didn't have to like invoke this sort of very a strange sense of lighting just to give painting this spotlight. It was like, no, that's just my light. That's how we understand light, and that's amazing. I think that those are the things that, and that's what I think about you when I think about you as an artist.
Yeah,
those things never feel forced. Like, those things just make sense. It's like the peg is fitting perfectly into where it's meant to fit, and I guess life is about just discovering like that. That moment where just things feel like they belong together. So
well, and it's so interesting thinking too about the context of the paintings and stuff too. Like like the Rembrandt's. Obviously this is very similar to all the the paintings we were just talking about, and that whole chiaroscuro, like the tenebrism, the heightened just light. And it's because he made these paintings in that environment that when you see them out of the environment, when they're in museums, it's always in these slightly more dimmer lit rooms, because if you have lights on too much, it's just going to look bad or fake. And I know one of the frustrations I've had with plein air painting is I used to, think it was ridiculous that people would be painting in their umbrellas, and I was like, oh, just to experience it. And I realized, like, oh, it's because actually, like, if you're painting in bright sunlight and you've got your canvas facing the sun, when you bring that into a different room, it's like no light on earth is as bright as the sun. It's going to look nasty. So unless that painting is always viewed outside in bright sunlight, it's not going to be correct. So you're thinking about the environment, and this painting is going to live in a certain place. So you've got to keep. Yeah, it took me a little while to realize just how important light is, and that's why even like so I've got these painting tents that I use when I'm outside, and it actually took me a long time to find the right one, because I couldn't just take any old orange or blue painting tent, because then all of my paintings would be compensating for that tint. So I had to find the right slightly beige, diffuse light for this tent or something, because it would affect the painting and all this stuff and how I interpret that stuff when I'm working. And so you just don't realize how much you need to consider your environment and the different environments it will inhabit, and so many little nuances. And it's been a slow process over time. But that just corresponds with thinking about, that's why Rembrandt painted the paintings he did, because of that. Right. His social structure, because of economics. Right
now, you're working on a show, right? You're working for September. Did I read that right?
So I am working on a show in September, and I'm also working on a show that opens next week.
Dude.
But so the reason, when is this going to be aired?
It could be next week. How long is that show going to be up for?
The show is going to be up for 2 weeks, and it's in Hudson Yards at this gallery called Sugarlift. And I definitely I wanted to do it because for me, um, it's a great opportunity, and I love to just have shows, and uh, because I had been on pause for so long, this show that I'm doing, I had 3 weeks
Hmm.
to start and finish a solo show with a 28-foot wall, two 14-foot walls, and two 4-foot walls.
That's perfect. That's you, dude.
Yeah,
That's so
exactly.
you.
No, and I was like, yeah, like because I had some work in progress, but it had all been, and I had been doing this and that, but I had been taking a break from painting, and so this was just a reason for me just to like. I was like, well, I've got these shows lined up for later in the year, but I really want to get going, and like, I just love seeing what can happen, and it's through this adrenaline rush that you know I have when I started. So first of all, I had to move out of my wood shop, which took a week. So I had 2 weeks to make a solo show from start to finish.
Nice. Yeah, just make it easier for yourself.
So after
Nice.
this, I'm gonna go back to painting. But it was basically like, well, you know what? I've got a bunch of these canvases that I haven't touched for so long because I've been too scared to, and I need to do some stuff. I need to get these paintings done. So I just basically just like went to town and have been trying to bring to conclusion a few things and start other things. And I've embraced the fact that like, you know what, I want to show the whole process. I've got some pretty raw canvases that I'm not scared to show anymore. I want to show the ugliness the paintings are. Just because it's a solo show doesn't mean it has to be all refined paintings that are going to sell for a lot of money. Like, I want to be able to see who I am, and this is who I am. I tried my best. And
Dude, I love
you know,
the couple of self portraits that I have of you. It's almost like you bit those, those canvases with your teeth. You were
yeah,
like, okay, I'm gonna tear this
yeah.
for this paint. I love them. I adore them as they are. I think they are you. Like that. Like I don't need to impose anything on those paintings to try to make them look like sharper, cleaner. I don't want to frame them like in. I love those shapes. I don't even know how to call the shape of that of those canvases, but that's you. Like
Yeah, and those are just like you're going with this, and you're like, oh, here's this, and like what I've been trying to do is I when I go too far on a canvas, I was talking to my friend Jeremy Miranda the other day, who I think he's a
oh,
awesome.
he's an
Yeah, his color
incredible
is like
painter.
he's so amazing. He's a super wonderful guy too. He and I like he's an actual dad. I am not. I don't think. But I am like we just send each other dad jokes all day long. It's just like we just I love the he's just a great guy. But like I was talking to him about the fact that like I started this plein air painting and I was in the studio and I was like, well, I want to resolve it. And every single time I approached it, it just got, I was like, oh, now it's just a different thing. And now it's lost this feeling of rawness because I was trying to form it into something and realizing like I should have just left that painting as it was and then started another canvas. And then when I got back to a certain point, I was like, okay, well, I'm pushing it further, 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 further. So here's the whole process to get to this one thing and to try to affect a canvas and push it more than it naturally is. Just, yeah, can suck something out of it that was meant to be there. And so, yeah, I've been trying to learn to come to terms like, well, you know what, this may not be the thing that I was wanting to show or what I'm capable of, but you don't always need to, it's not about showing off. It's about just showing who you are. And yeah, so I'm really excited to show a bunch of different things. And, that's what this show is going to be next week. And then the show in September is going to be a big kind of like all-encompassing compendium of, yeah, these landscapes, the journal entries, sketches, figure pieces, and all that stuff. And so this show and the great people like at Sugarlift for offering me it just gives me a chance just to like get back into the system, And it's also kind of a litmus test for post-COVID things. I mean, I want people to see work in person and it'll be interesting to see like if people feel comfortable going to galleries, and because it's not, it's not about sales at all, but when it is your income, it's important to be able to have some sort of a thing. Because I realized, any sacrifice I ever had to make, like, oh, I can't make rent, I'll just crash in the studio when I was in my, early 20s or whatever. Like, there comes a point when, in order to make things you want to make, you've got to invest in yourself. And in order to do that, you've got to have some success so you can make the work that you want to make. There's nothing wrong with having, some success. It's not about selling out, but like, it'll be interesting to see what the art market is like after the COVID thing, and who wants to be investing or purchasing and this and that. And I have actively run away. If someone emails me about wanting a painting, like, it'll probably take me longer to respond to that email than someone emailing me like about flowers or something. I just can't. I don't want to do the game of, I've never. This was an issue I ran into when I was selling paintings with Restoration Hardware. Was there were paintings I made naturally, and then, they were luckily purchased. But then when more were wanted, I just couldn't do it because I wasn't thinking about serial making them, even though they're the same thing. I couldn't just replicate, and I've never wanted to do that because it isn't about milking that sale. It's just nice when it can happen naturally. So that's my thinking about going back into the whole artistic career. It was really interesting doing carpentry for so long because I hadn't worked a job for a long time. Painting was work. What is that? But painting was my income, and so it was really interesting to be like, oh wait, I'm working these hours today and I'm getting paid for them next week. What? Wow! The more that I work, the more I'm going to get paid, and I can support myself because I know that I'm going to have this money coming in. I was like, what? This is strange.
That's not true for painting.
Yeah.
Put more hours into painting and you're going to get paid more. Oh no, that's not true.
No. I'll get paid less. Like it's no, but it just made me realize that I want to be able to make these larger things, and so I just need to be able to make it happen. And so I'm tentatively just seeing what the art market is like, because I don't want to take advantage of anything, but I just want to see if I need to keep carpentry part-time to support the paintings I want to make, and just being able to come to terms with what sacrifices, need to be there for the continuation of what I want to make.
Dude, I mean, this is all speculation because that's all any of us could ever offer, but I have a feeling that the people that have your paintings, they bought them because they love your work. Like, they genuinely love your work.
And this is the thing where I'm totally defeatist and self-loathing. Like, there's a reason, I don't have any work for sale because it's all sold. I don't have anything available in galleries because it's sold. Like, I know, and the people that have the work, do, it's taken me this is almost like a therapy session. It's taken me a long time to be able to accept being appreciated for the work that I do or something. It's very strange. I think a lot of artists deal with that confidence of like, if we weren't hard on ourselves, we wouldn't push ourselves. But at some time, we need to realize like you're actually making good things, and that's why people are purchasing it. And they want to support you, and so it just takes a certain awareness to realize that maybe you should stop running away from it and embrace it, and try to make the most of it. Because it just helps to be able to understand that like it's okay to be good at something, and it's already torturous enough. You don't have to torture yourself more.
Right. And it doesn't mean like if you enjoy that process and if you think you can be proficient at it, or the fact that you understand yourself as being good at it, it's not that you're being, it's not this ego where you're being like almost pedantic with yourself. No, and not so much to the point that that you're going to put yourself in a situation where you're bound to just fail at it. And I think that that's what prompts like a bunch of those moments where we need to, we just escape. We run away and we escape a situation because we are like, well, there's this, if there's a huge expectation that is created with my work, then there's also this huge, probability of me not meeting that expectation, which means that we can, I'm going to fail miserably and disappoint everyone and disappoint myself.
And that's why I'm excited for like this show next week is like, there was literally only so much I could do. And so all I could do for myself was try. And I know that, I'm doing my best, and it may not be what people would expect. And like, that's fine because it's what I wanted to do,
Dude, I've seen some of the pieces that you want to show. I don't even think of them as like, oh, this is a good like Tim painting. Like, this is your painting. Like, if anything, I'm like super grateful that you're giving yourself time, and whatever time, fuck it. Like, it could be 3 weeks. I don't care. Like, to me, and I'll tell you how I feel, and I think that's how a lot of people feel, and a lot of people that love your work. It's like a gift, dude. It's like, we have this chance of watching you make paintings again for, whatever amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Like, that's already amazing. That for us, the people that enjoy your painting, it's like, oh, I love it. And I'm going to love it regardless of, what the paintings look like. I honestly, dude, like, I could care less. Like, you could be doing omelets, like you said, and I would be like,
why
fuck.
did I use that note?
Dude, I'm going to run with that. I actually love omelets. So I'm going to take that.
And that's why actually I want to, like, I realize I'm on my cell phone, so I can show you something here. But my, this actually is a total mess in here right now, but I'm going to pull out, where is the camera going to pull out? Hold on a second here. There was one that I was debating, oh yeah, are you showing this video during the?
I could show this part. Yeah, totally.
This moment's awkward.
Oh, this would be perfect for a podcast. Yeah.
Well, you can see like, I mean, I'll show you. I'll do a whole studio visit in a way, but like, so this is the beginning of like a figure piece. I started like 20 of these, and you can see like a figure emerging, and maybe it's an ancient death. Who knows? But I was thinking about showing this thing that I totally destroyed. Because I took it off the stretchers and I sanded it all down. I want to show the process of that.
Can't see where you destroyed it, but fine.
Oh yeah, well. That's
what you say, but that's not what I see.
There was a whole. I'm gonna find it.
I love how your paintings. It's almost like they play hide and seek.
They do.
It's almost like I'm sure they changed places at night when you go to bed. I'm sure they like scurry around and they're like, okay, we gotta hide.
Well, like, so this painting here, like what I did was
nice.
So I had this landscape study I did, and so I stitched it together.
Oh, nice.
And when I did that, I see it was going to be like a Bruegel scene, like a land of cocaine. But then I saw like this is like an illuminated torso, and like I can see maybe someone's basically raising his arm up. But then I saw almost like a cowering figure here, and I'm not going to finish this in time to be a finished painting for the show. But I'm like, well, I kind of want to show like the work, and I want to show this as like a sketch of something that is intimate. And I don't think that painting, if I were to finish it, it might be a totally different feeling. But like, why not show people that's the way it is right now? It's
right.
It's got plenty of options. It's definitely not done, but I still find it interesting. So I kind of want to just be able to show the whole process of stuff, because I think it's I guess what this discussion has gone into a lot of times is just the obsession with process, and it just yields all these different results. And so why not show, my thinking is like with a canvas like that, if I tried to, like, I could never combine. I guess that's the difference, or between a learned technical skill of illustration and this inherent like thing with painting is like I couldn't get to that point again if I tried to replicate that canvas because it was a plein air sketch that I wanted to make larger, so I stitched it to like a random canvas that I had, and in doing so I saw a composition form. I could sketch that out on a new canvas and get it to look like that, but it wouldn't have the same texture that I was using to sand down and almost see like this illuminated blue figure or whatever. Like I could never get that again. And so do I want to either like murder my darling and go into that and make it different? Or do I just do another one and see where that lends to? And suddenly there can be a whole, series of 10 of those canvases that have different emotions that lead from this one unresolved thing. And so it's just a constant play. And I think it'd be fun to show that.
Oh, dude, I think that's amazing because I can totally understand that feeling as a painter that there are moments in a painting that if you decide to paint over them, they're gone. You will never, ever, ever have access to them. And many times it pays off. Many times you're able to guide that painting and turn it into something else. And other times, you're going to be killing yourself like every single day when you think about that moment of a painting that you let go and you tell yourself, fuck, like I could have done 100 other paintings. Like, why didn't I have the courage maybe at that moment to say, I want to keep this as is. I want to keep it. And it could be, dude, right now you were describing a figure in that, white sort of blot. And I can't see it. Come on, dude. Like,
what are you talking about? No, wait, listen.
Dude, I love that I can't see it.
See, this is where his armpit would be. Oh yeah, no, this figure, there's like ribs. No, I know, like, no one else can see it. This is what I
love that I can't. I love it that I can't because that's when I understand that this is yours. Like this is where you saw something.
So this is a canvas, or just a masonite thing. And so with this, I haven't touched it because you can see like maybe you can see that standing figure kind of emerging.
Of course, okay, that one I can.
Yeah, there's maybe like a sculpture down there. There might be like two legs and an arm or something, but like I sketched this because you can see like the lines underneath that. Like I was just scribbling, and I was like, oh, I see a standing figure, and now I'm at a point where I'm like, well, if I was smarter, what I would have done was I would have done a series of small scale sketches before starting a 4-foot square painting. But that is my thumbnail, basically. And from there, I can now do sketches and then do another version that maybe is larger. Once I figure out, like, I don't know if I want the sky to be lighter or darker or whatever, but, like, it's just funny thinking that it took working on something that scale to make me think of an idea that wouldn't have happened if I had drawn things out initially or whatever and then tried to make it a larger thing. It takes kind of the going from big to small, back to big, back to another thing. And so it's, people always think of artistic processes being like smaller to larger. Right. It's not necessarily that at all.
No, not at all. I have my dream, this idea of the 70-year-old painter that you were describing. Yeah. I want in my future to be able to paint like oversized sketches.
Yeah. Sorolla. Like remember seeing like his scale, like even like his thumbnail is like 2 stories tall. You're just like, Jesus.
But that's all I want. Like I don't want a traditional sense of resolution to a painting. Yeah. Just leaving everything just super, super open. And I want that. That's the painting and that's the painter that I want to be. So, dude, these paintings are amazing. And I already know that you hold the answer as to what you're going to do, and you've already convinced yourself that that's what you want to show.
Yeah.
I'm probably the worst judge of this because I'm totally along for the ride, and whatever you would have said, I'm like, oh hell yeah, that looks awesome. But I'm it makes total sense. It makes absolute sense. I think we discussed that show that was maybe 2 years ago, that Unfinished show at the Met.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
yeah, and that was an incredible show. But the only part that I mean, not to say that I dislike, but I wouldn't like the narrative of those paintings to be tied to ideas that were never accomplished.
Yeah.
I think that those are pieces in and of themselves. Like they may not fit into the definition that we want to impose on certain images, but that does not mean that they are not super powerful images, themselves.
Well, yeah,
So
I'm actually intrigued by this too because so that show was one of my favorites, and I remember talking about that, and I was reading about, like so the Met Brewer is essentially it's closing. It's closed. I'm sure with COVID, it definitely had some changes happen, but because it wasn't as successful as as the plan should have been for it or something. And I was reading reviews about it, and a bunch of these reviews were saying oh, and the Met Brewer never had good shows, especially its opening show of the unfinished paintings. Like what a waste! And I was like, what? No, so suddenly I was like, wait, does it mean that only artists appreciated that? Because I feel like everyone I've talked to who happens to be an artist, was obsessed with it, and so I think we just love seeing that process, and maybe some people need to only see finished paintings, but yeah, it was so interesting knowing that those were the results, that those are the things that led to these beautiful, things.
Yeah. Yeah, in my mind, what I want to, I'm not saying what you're saying is not true, but in my mind, I want to teach myself that they don't have to lead anywhere.
Yeah, they don't have to.
They don't. They can just.
But the fact that they do is beautiful.
Right. Because what we are getting to see is that part of a process, or and to me, it's actually amazing. And I don't want to group those paintings because they were actually, if we tried to categorize those paintings, they were all quite different. Some of them were literally unfinished. Some of them were abandoned. Some of them were probably thought of as bad ideas.
Yeah.
And it's not, I guess you can clump, all those things together, but each of them has its own context. But I think that instead of looking at those pieces as part of a process and part of a very traditional process, I also think it's super cool if you could just kind of lift the torch, like if this was a relay and you could just pick up the torch right from there. You don't have to look back. You don't have to understand them contextually.
Yeah.
You don't have to see them as part of this chain of production that led to, other paintings. In Freud's term, for example, there are Freud, finished paintings that are just remarkable. Just one of the most brilliant paintings in history. But there is something about those scribbles that he felt the need to put down, and that he never followed. By the way, it's some of the most inefficient drawing that I've ever seen in history, because he would just put something down and then just don't follow it at all when he was painting. Like he would always draw somehow something smaller, and every time he would paint, he would just paint bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And it's like, what was that drawing good for then? But that stuff amazes me. But I love that feeling where you don't have to almost pay your dues. I mean, I'm a very traditional painter, so in some sense I believe in those things. But I love also the possibility that you can just pick up where that image just kind of left off and say, you are going to be my starting point, because I see so many beautiful things in there that I can totally believe that this can be a powerful image too, that a powerful painting too. And it doesn't have to obey to anything else. It just has to, be true to that which I see there.
It's almost like, you talked about that a painting doesn't have to be a path to somewhere else. It's almost like, you stumble upon this abandoned room with a wardrobe in the middle of it. There's a chance that you could open that wardrobe and you can go to Narnia, and that would be pretty awesome. It's pretty cool just to find this abandoned room with this amazing mystical wardrobe in it anyways. do you want to take the chance and like see where that goes to, or do you want to live with the myth of like, oh, here's this thing that's enough to happen upon this. Now let me find another room. Let me find another thing. Like you don't need to always, a painting doesn't need to lead to this resolve where it might not end up being as romantic as you want it to be. It might be a dead end. Oh, it's just a wardrobe. Shit. And now I open the door and there's no more magic.
Omelets in Narnia. In Narnia.
There's an omelet in the wardrobe. And
Narnia, like I was fine with omelets. I was not expecting Narnia, dude. But omelets in Narnia is a perfect title for this little conversation. That's pretty good. And dude, that's where we're gonna finish it, Narnia. Okay, yeah. But because you've been insanely generous with your time, and that's crazy. And thank you so much. And you have 40 hours to finish this show.
Yeah, basically. So... Well, the thing is too. this is what I think is so funny is I've been seeing someone in New York over the past couple of years, and like every winter, it's almost been an ongoing joke that like every time I'm gonna commute down there, there's a snowstorm, and it just so happens to be that all next week, any of the days I'm supposed to drive this show down to New York, there's like this ensuing snowstorm. So I've got to figure out a couple of things. It's just an adventure. I'm gonna get the show done and then have to do a marathon leg to get to work there. But it's,
maybe it's not just a snowstorm. Maybe you carry the snow with you, dude. You got to think that's just your energy, dude.
That's my carpet ride. Yeah.
No, but I'll tell you this openly. Like I will 100% try to spread the word, about your show, and I am positive that people that are already huge fans of your work will be delighted to see this new show of yours. If they're anything like me, it doesn't, dude. You could have told me that you did it last night, and I would be like, "Fuck yeah, I'm there!" Like that. I want to experience that show. Like that's amazing. To me, the time again. I don't equate time with value. I really don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
I really, really don't. And but I would, I'm happily going to be part of the people just rooting you on and sharing, whatever you want to share about the show and upcoming, September show. But I'm positive you're going to do well. Like people that love your work, they are waiting for this. So
yeah, and I'm just excited just to have a thing happen. It's like I said, it's a buffer, it's a catalyst, and I love the Sugar Lift. They're open to me just trying it out, and so they've been really cool with that. So I'm hoping,
that's
it's
awesome,
just good
dude.
to be back in the studio. So it's all good stuff.
No, dude. And honestly, thank you. This was a blast. Like,
oh, totally.
It's so nice talking to you.
And I hopefully, I was thinking too. Like, I know we've talked a lot about doing a thing. I mean, hopefully with coronavirus subsiding in ways, we can finally get together for some sort of painting trip. And
hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I want to be one of ththose people that gets strapped to the to the rock. I know I would be your first casualty.
Yeah.
It's like we in a couple of years you just tell people, I was going to do a workshop, but we lost Nicholas.
Yep.
And
but now I've got this great skeleton to do this figure drawing anatomy course with.
Right. And this 40-page disclosure that you have to sign.
Yep.
You have to sign this before you do my workshop. I'm not liable for anything that happens during this workshop. But no, dude, that is going to happen. I know it for a fact. So
good.
And if it doesn't happen, it can be like the lightning painting with the chairs, It was the best. It was the best crossover that never happened, and that's fine, and that can be totally cool. But no, we'll find time for sure.
Better, yeah, that'd be awesome,
dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honestly, thank you so much. I'm gonna. I mean, this is the boring part.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you my email so you can, take that file, whatever, you recorded it in, doesn't matter if it's, whatever, if it's a .wav file or it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Send me whatever you got. So, and I'll find a place for it, with the audio, but honestly, thank you. I really feel it's a pleasure talking to you and you were able to put into words a ton of things that I've been struggling with. So, this is my sort of therapy in a way. It comes from artists, so I don't wish that on anyone. Just other artists, just trying to help other artists figure things out. Probably not the most intelligent thing to do, but no. But thank you, honestly, thank you, and you know that I've always like admired what you do. I mean, before I started talking to you, like in my mind, I was like, well, there's artists that I admire, like last week I was able to talk to Ruprecht, and I'm like, oh my god, he's in my mind, he's like the best contemporary painter.
Oh yeah.
And it's not to say that I don't admire you. I think you already know how much I really deeply admire you as a painter. But I just have this insane amount of respect for you. Like, I in some ways that goes beyond painting, and it's just like as a human being, like, I don't know, like you've put yourself through so much, dude, and it's like, fuck, I think that the people that are lucky enough to see all that life experience packed into a painting of yours, that's like one of the most amazing gifts of all. But I really, I hope you can tell how much I respect you when I tell you those things. And I don't know if that means anything. It doesn't matter if it means much or not, but I'm being super honest about it. And yeah, so I'm going to love everything you put out, dude. It's beyond, like, even if you make an ugly painting, I'm like, I love that ugly painting. Like,
I think we all as artists have those paintings where we think it's ugly, and that it's someone's going to find it beautiful. And so, it's to everyone's benefit just to be able to make things and feel comfortable putting it out there, because someone's going to appreciate, something. And so it's important to be able to, that's our lot in life, is just to make things and show it. And, it's just, it's great to have a community for it. So I really love being able to talk to you about it too. I haven't been talking to anyone about painting for so long, so it's great.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Awesome. So thank you, dude. Thank you so much for this, 2 hours and a half. It felt like amazing conversation. Thank you.